I think it has been a pleasure interacting with all of you in NIPER, and I just completed a little more than 10 years in Mohali, and so I don't really work on fluorinated compounds, but last 2 years we have ventured into some molecules which are fluorinated for certain reasons. We got into it. But without knowing much of the implication that would actually come in our way. But then it was a journey kind of unfolded for us, and I just wanted to show quickly the relevance why those fluorinated peptides or fluorinated polymers, they are relevant. So mostly you are looking at things from the medicinal chemistry perspective, but today I will give you in this talk I will just give you a different glimpse or different flavor of how you can actually incorporate fluorine and get some interesting materials property out of it. That's very important. And so those of you who have not been to INST, so this is not very far at the moment. It was very across the road earlier, but it is now in sector 81. Okay, so you are most welcome to visit INST. So just to give you in 2 slides things why it is important for our work to incorporate fluorine. In our group, what we do is we actually look at nature and try to understand the underlying phenomena in nature that happens. Like nature typically, you have got a lot of non-covalent interaction that self-assemble the molecules to form certain structures, right? And based on the functional output of certain structures, you might also get some very interesting property. Like if you look into these top ones, like you have this bark of the tree, and it has its own wound healing mechanism by secretion of latex. Similarly, our body is also an example where we can actually have very nice wound healing, and you actually can also propel the wound healing to get faster if you provide certain patches like hydrogel patches or something like that. So our idea is that how we can actually develop, looking at nature, can we really make nature mimetic materials? If you look at bottom down there, we also actually work on precision structures. I mean, if you look at the honeycomb or the the ice crystals, what forms, and you want to make a lab, some nanoparticle or whatsoever you want to make, it's so difficult, right? There's a reason nature does it perfectly as a perfect engineer, which we in the lab often fail. The reason being is that the thermodynamic and kinetics of the process. Typically, nature does everything in an out of equilibrium process where things are all kinetically favored. But in the self-assembly, what we used to do earlier also, now also many of us do, they are all thermodynamically controlled. But that's where the things are quite different. Okay, so if you have to emulate nature mimetic property, you need to have out of equilibrium things, and we actually work in that directions. The last example which I am showing is something like muscle actuation. You see the chameleon, they change their color. And how do they change their color? And they are camouflage themselves from external attack. Look at our heart that is always pumping, right? These two have very unique property. Okay, so they have something like non-linear mechanical property. Okay, there's something called muscle actuation is happening. So we in India, we actually try to make such kind of materials synthetically and try to then look at the implication. Can you really use these materials for cell differentiation, for tissue formations, whether they actually match the natural material like biopolymers you get in nature, or you can do even better than that and they are processable or tailorable. So these are the objective we have in our group. So with that, we actually, we have a wonderful journey, and we start, that is where Professor Jain's group and we interact quite often, is that we start with taking small peptides and try to look at if you take this peptide, design these peptides, using this non-covalent interaction like the amide hydrogen bonding or some additional interaction like pi-pi interaction, ionic interaction, can we now make those molecules self-assemble to form such kind of nanostructures, like it can be a nanofiber, it can be a nanoparticle. Can we really control? And then from there, can we really make a hierarchical structure? right? That's our job. And we started with this molecule, which was in 2018 ChemCom that came up, and you can see, okay, let me just get the pointer. Right. So you can see that it is an amyloid A beta 42 nucleating core inspired peptide. So you have V, then 2 phenylalanine, alanine, and then this side we put 2 lysine unit for better solubility. This side is your, your EPMOC group, so that it balances, and that actually gives you the self-assembly in water, and it forms very nice nanofibers. We get to see. Over the time, this is just an introductory slide what we do for you. I will get to the flow. So then over the time what we did is that this N-terminus functionality, we also made it very nice stimuli responsive. We used Kumarin unit that can have these, very nice cycloaddition reaction reversible. We can open and close, and then accordingly we can change the, structure and the property of that. We also tried to make it redox responsive by putting a ferrocene onto it. The ferrocene can be done, can be oxidized into ferrocenium ion, and so it can change color. So we made very interesting conducting hydrogels, which are very important conducting hydrogels, because if you want to do neuronal tissue, tissue regeneration, you need to have certain conductivity into it. So some of the works which are under progress. Another interesting thing, this is where actually our fluoro things will start, is this azobenzene we put, and all of you know azobenzene can have very nice cis-trans isomerization, right? Incidentally, this is in trans form. If you shine UV light, 365 nanometer light, this will go into the cis form or Z form. And again, if you irradiate that with 405 visible light, it comes back into this. So we wanted to look at how are the self-assembly for this. Not only in N-terminus, over the time we also have looked at what happens if you change in the C-terminus. You can get catalytic amyloid-like property. You might get something very interesting, compartmentalization, co-acervation. You can have these very nice liquid-liquid droplet creations based on arginine, because arginine is very special. So we looked at all these different things. We have varied a lot of different things, and we try to look at this, and we make peptide is our basic building block. We self-assemble towards making hierarchical structure, which will be in the next slide. But this is where we ask a question, and we wanted to look at, this happens over a Gordon conference in Switzerland 2 years ago, in 2023 summer. When we went, I was wondering, and we came up with an Australian guy. We said that, okay, he can provide me something very nice, fluorinated azobenzene. Now, what happens in fluorinated azobenzene, which we'll eventually see, I just wanted to give you the hint. If you take fluorinated azobenzene, your trans to cis photoisomerization here we do in using visible light. You can actually do with the, here we do in the UV light. If you have fluorinated azobenzene, you can switch, you can make this photo switch, which is visible photo switch, which is very good, because if you have visible photo switch and you make hydrogel out of it, you don't need to shine UV light over your hydrogel, so that hydrogel will have a gel sol things over such harmful UV light. You can do it in visible light. That has an implication in photopharmacology. I have 2 slides to show why it is important later on. So this is another thing. This is the last slide from the general what we do in the group. You can see that we are actually inspired by this science paper, where it shows that if you make hydrogels, and if you actually take your MSCs, mesenchymal stem cells, then what happens based on the hydrogel mechanical property, every hydrogel will be some stiffer or something maybe weaker. You can see that your stem cells can get differentiated in the neuronal cells, or it can be in the, let's say, the muscle cells, or you can also get in the the bone cells. You can get differentiated into it, which is very good if you want to make let's say extracellular matrix mimetic hydrogel scaffold material, which has a bigger implication in the regenerative medicine. That's what we do. And over here I showed this. You can make these peptide hydrogels. It's like a bone cement. We mineralize them, and this you can see that they are self-healable. As I said, our body is wound healing, right? You cut it, it will automatically mend. These things are, you see, we cut this, then we mend it, and you see that they are color coded, and actually they fix. It's like a very nice glue, and we use this, and then we see that there is a very nice hydroxyapatite crystallization happens. That is very important, because your muscle and tendon, where your bone and the muscles are there, so you have these collagen fibers, And in the collagen fibers, you know that tropocollagens are there, and in tropocollagens you will have this hydroxyapatite crystallization which happens. We actually showed our synthetic material, which is peptides. Those peptides which I just showed, you can mineralize and you can generate such kind of things. Not only that, as I was saying, those heart kind of muscle cells, they always have this actuating behavior, and they show this kind of non-linear elastic behavior. Typically, you know, most of the material, hydrogel if you take, just tell me if you have seen any hydrogel. Morning when you wake up in the morning, right? So you get your toothpaste, right? You press the tube, that means you apply force, the hydrogel flows, and that's why it comes out from the tube. And once it comes out from the tube, you can put it on the brush and it does not flow anymore because you have removed the force, right? So this hydrogel is called shear thinning hydrogel. Typically, most of the hydrogel, if you make any biomaterial you want to make, it will be like that. But if you have to really go for cardiac muscle cells, it has to have that actuating behavior. If such cardiac tissues or the, you know, our vein and arteries, if they have shear thinning like hydrogel, what would happen? During systole diastole movement, well, you cannot just withstand the pressure. It will fall and you will die, right? So for that, what you needed is that you needed strain stiffening. It should have a counterintuitive behavior that you put force, but this will resist. And then as a result of which, what will happen? You can see that at very low strain, the shear modulus increases. This is something very interesting, and this is something we are working in India. Only our group is working. And over the world, I think you will find hardly 7-8 groups who are working in. If you can make such synthetic material, they will be processable, tailorable, and you can actually change the entire ball game. And we have actually published something very recently. We are also filing patent for something. So you can make this peptide and you can join that with some polymer, and that also we are expert in polymer. So we can conjugate them well, and we can have injectable gels, and they can actually have very nice muscle cells proliferation. You can see we have actually looked at it also in animal studies and wound healing. It shows amazingly good behavior. So I am not going to show all this here. Just I wanted to give you briefly, this is our inspiration. Now what happens? These peptides, all the peptides, if you self-assemble, I will show that later, you have these amide bonds of peptide in their secondary structure. They orient themselves very nicely. You get a very nice secondary structure, right? You can follow it up by circular dichroism spectroscopy. So what happens is that because the amide bonds, their dipolar orientation makes it to have a very permanent polarization. If that happens, you can ideally generate something called piezoelectricity, and that has recently, over 5 years, there are a lot of hue and cry. It has given some field called peptide piezoelectronics. Okay, so this is something very interesting, and we thought, perfect, and such kind of regenerative medicine, if you look at collagen, triple helix and all this, they have always this dipole pointing up, and if you now measure the piezoelectricity of collagen, they have also sizable, the piezoelectricity, and over the time you have seen that over the year, as you age, your bone get degraded, you see your piezo-responsive nature of the bone, that also changes. So there are a lot of work which is going on in that. So we can connect the piezoelectricity of the hydrogel scaffold along with this non-linear mechanical property to get a better regenerative materials. That is actually our goal. So what you need to do, you have to enhance the piezoelectricity. Perfect. Now, it is important over the, so what I will show here, that if you actually have a fluorine incorporations, what you see is that you have this enhanced polarity and dipolar alignment because of the fluorine's high electronegativity. That is what you have learnt. And you would also have this through space fluorine-fluorine interactions. I will show some of the data. And you will have this altered hydrophobicity. You have learnt about all these things. Now what would it have implication into it? First thing, and that is I am going to come, if you substitute fluorine on azobenzene, you see the photoresponsive nature changes. It goes into visible range, which is very good. And you can have a very nice self-assembly control. So you can have self-assembly, something which was going slower because of introduction of fluorine, your self-assembly may be faster. If self-assembly may be faster, your gelation kinetics might also change. That is very important. If you want to inject something quickly, like nowadays you are filling dental caries, right? You put a hydrogel, ideally you put it and in 30 seconds it should fill, and then they will do UV curing, right? But if it takes, let's say, 5 minutes, so then you have to keep your mouth like jaw like this for 5 minutes. It's not painful, right? Small little things, they are very important. So we are looking at these things, and the last thing is the functional implication, that is the piezoelectric enhancement introducing fluorine. So these are very important thing. One is the piezoelectric enhancement, another thing is that getting into visible photo switch. So these are two aspects I will show in my next 10-15 minutes talk. And you can see typical azobenzene, if you look at, this is typical azobenzene. I was saying that from trans to cis, if you want to go, you have to do UV light, and this is the, you can reverse it using visible light, or you heat it up, then it comes back, right? And typically you see the UV visible spectra, it is like that. On the E azobenzene, you have this pi star transition. For that you get this particular band around 300 or so, and you get n pi star band, which is something like this, 450 is a peak. But what happens if you convert into Z, you see that pi star band goes down and your n pi star band comes up in this particular the photo switch conversion. Okay, now importantly what I wanted to show here, here if you look at these n pi star excitation energies, they are very similar for both E and Z isomer. Okay, you can see that E and Z isomer in n pi star band, both in E and Z isomer, they are very similar. So that's why they tend to absorb in the same range. Okay, but if you now look at this particular molecule where you actually have this tetrafluoro1 molecule, we have now a variety of fluorinated. You can have tetrafluoro, we have got pentafluoro. We are trying to synthesize ourselves as well, not relying only on that Australian collaborator. So you can see that very interestingly, it can actually have switching into cis in green light. You can get it back using blue light. And the most interesting thing what I would like you to note is that because of this fluorine, which are actually adjacent, because of this electronegativity of fluorine, you can see that this actually gets stabilized, and because of that you see there is a difference between E and Z isomer. You see that there is a huge difference between n pi star transition here and n pi star transition over there, and because of that you can see that there are actually very different n pi star band you get. In this case normal azobenzene, you get the same kind of absorbance. In this particular case you have different one, and because it is different you can actually choose a tail wavelength where it is E, the blue one you see E. You can take 530 nanometer wavelength where there is no Z. You can use that wavelength to switch that from E form to Z form. You can use the tail wavelength in this, and that is why you can make this as visible photo switch, which is very good. Okay, and you can see over the like you can see you can actually tune that in different molecule, this kind of EZ conversion using different kind of visible switch. So you can actually do a lot of different things. You can change their this optoelectronics property, which is very important for such azobenzene. Why it is important? It is important because this is something I don't need to really explain all the NIPA student. This is important because the drug has if you have the drug in the active form, it has this toxic level, right? And you also have you need to have concentration of the effective drug, which would actually this is something you are looking at, where you will have the efficacy. So people over the last 1 decade, I have been seeing the photopharmacology. Incidentally, when I was next to Ben Feringa's group, this William Szymanski, he was working with a good friend of mine. So they were working on in Ben Feringa's group, they were actually working on such kind of photopharmacology. The idea is the following: you take any drug, in that drug which is drug has an active site, and other than the active site you might have certain site where you can actually put this photo switch, and what happens is that using this photo switch, like azobenzene as a photo switch, you can actually convert into cis and trans, and if you do so, you can actually you can make the drug prodrug or active drug. So this is something example. You can see that you can, based on this particular molecule, you can actually make it cis and trans, and you can make this drug active or inactive. And in fact you can see this, there is this example, there is another example where you can, there is an antibacterial drug, you can actually it is a normal azobenzene they have taken, and you can see that you can grow the bacteria, and one case you can mask it, and using light you can actually make one side potent antibacterial, another side bacterial growth still happens. So this is very important. That is one of the reasons we are working on such, the visible photo switch. And I showed you already an example why we are working on it. So now, what is the second objective, which is important for us, is the promoting piezoelectricity, and why fluorine is important. Now, if you have this, there are some inorganic piezoelectric material, barium titanate and all these things, they are inorganic. But you have to look for organic piezoelectric material. And one of the thing is this particular molecule called PVDF. And its PVDF actually can stay in 3 different conformation. Okay, it can be, you can see this is the fluorine atom. It can be alpha phase, beta phase and gamma phase. And you can see that in beta phase of the PVDF, they have very nice alignment. You see all the fluorines are at one side, orientation wise, right? Tacticity wise, if you look at, it will be like that. And because of that, there is a huge, because of fluorine electronegativity, there will be a dipole creation across, right? So, but in the gamma phase also you don't get such kind of things, and that is why you see this PVDF is very special. It will have a molecular structure, it will have a polar molecular structure which positively and negatively charged ends. You can have crystal phases, it can have alpha, beta, gamma, and the beta one is the most electroactive one and has the highest dipole moment because of its molecular structure, which is very essential for the piezoelectric values. And the last thing is that if you have this piezoelectric material and you can actually complete the circuit, right? So you can actually generate piezo response out of it. And how do you do so? You can actually drop cast this piezoelectric material on some surface and you can actually connect it with a volt. Now you can do 2 things. One is that you can apply current, then you see that it will start giving a mechanical response, or if you tap on that particular material, you will see that there will be a current generation. That's what is piezoelectricity. Means I am waving my hand, and because I am waving the hand, it will generate current. So it will be intrinsic current which you will be generating. And how do you follow that up? You can actually see something like this butterfly loop. If you look at the amplitude of the mechanical force and the applied bias over here, you can actually have very nice butterfly loop like signature. It signifies that this material is piezo responsive, and you can actually quantify the D33 value, that is a coefficient of piezo response along this 33 plane. So you can quantify, and more you get the value, it's more piezo responsive. It's very important. And you can think of, piezo responsive is the sustainable future. You can put in your shoes such kind of material and you go for jogging and you can put your phone over here, you can get it charged. And that's what is already there. And in Netherlands, what they are coming up with, this is the road I am showing. Typically the cycle lane, what they have done is that they have put all this piezo responsive material, not organic piezoelectric, the inorganic one, they are putting, and as the car goes or cycle goes, they will get automatically charged, and the light, street light, will actually run based on that. So there's something very nice sustainable solution I just wanted to show. But then what is our gain is that, in peptide piezoelectricity we wanted to do, because if you are making some hydrogel out of it, then that will have an implication in the regenerative medicine or extracellular matrix like thing. And this is an example I just picked up from advanced material. I'm sorry, I didn't put it was so hurriedly made. I can share the slides, and you want something, I can always share. This is an advanced material paper. You can see that this is very simple, CBZ peptide, single one. And in this particular one, you see that there is a 4th position, there is a fluorination. And you can look at the common structure over here. So they have done it. All are typical phenylalanine, or the 4th position para, they have phenylalanine, or all of them are phenylalanine. And when they have done it, and they have looked at from the crystal structure, I am not showing all in details, and you can actually put that very nicely over there, and then you can tap force. And if you tap force, you can actually generate piezoelectric response. And interestingly, you would appreciate that you see that this particular molecule, where you have only one fluorine, that has a very nice dipolar, one direction, right? But because if you have all throughout fluorine, then there will be a vector of the electronegativity that will cancel out to some extent. That's obvious. That's what this paper has proven. And you actually see that this guy shows the maximum piezoelectric response as compared to even the phenylalanine. In fact, the all pentafluoro, it has much lower one. Remember, this they have done it on a crystal. But I think we are also trying to put such kind of peptides in our material and trying to see how much in fiber, how much you can go, because our aim is to go to regenerative medicines, right? And this example, it's got in advanced material, because you see Very interesting example. Typically, you go to Afghanistan, you will have all pista, badam, kaju badam, all these kind of things will come, right? It will all come. Now you have to sort them out. Machine learning, right? So they put it based, and your walnut, pista, kaju badam, all this, they will have a different shape and weight. Based on that, they are calibrated. If they put it on a weighing machine, which will be automatic sorter, then it will fall and it will give different response, and they will go in different sorting chain, and it will get sorted into kaju badam ke bottle mein kaju badam jayega, walnut ke bottle mein walnut ka bottle jayega. So it will be automated, and you can see that the piezo response in nanodiameter signal is actually quite different. So this is something interesting implication. Not only that, one can also, suppose you are not well, or you have got cough or cold, or you can do voice modulation because I'm talking. So you can put and you can do this mapping also. So there are a lot of interesting things piezo responsiveness can do, and already a lot of works are going on. I'm not getting there, but I wanted to show how we can do in the chemical perspective, or this particular one which we are doing. We did also this work. This was in Chem Matter in 2022, and you can see that this particular molecule, normal azobenzene, when we have put, and I can show it to you here. You see, this is a typical molecule, a monomer, and when you self-assemble them, you actually get it very nicely peptide self-assembly. Because of that, there is a remnant polarization over here, and that's why this molecule becomes piezo-responsive. But you disassemble this molecule, you don't get any polarization because it's all random directions. And that is very clear that when you have it in nanofiber form, you see very nice piezoelectric behavior. But in the case of all those molecules where you disassemble, you don't get to have such kind of behavior. You can again regenerate. This was the first example in literature. Before that, Gazit actually published some Nature and Science on this, but ours was a follow-up one, and we could show first time on-demand piezo response. In his case, he cannot do. Whatever you get, you get. Okay. Having done that, we were now interested. That is actually the thing. Not only the visible photo switch. We thought that okay, the fluorine is there. Let us see what is the whether it has an effect. This is something we wanted to put it over here. We are also trying to put in this phenylalanine, such kind of fluoro peptides, just to see where you can manipulate that will have enhanced. So this is work in progress. So I cannot, it's going on. Just to show you couple of another example that how this the photo switching happens over here. As I said, even if you put these peptides into it, you can see that 3 to 300 band, it actually comes down when you do E2Z photoisomerization, and this N-pi band, it goes up. But interestingly, when you put this fluoroazobenzene over here, you can see that it is a very interesting. We did this DFT calculation, and this is what I had a very nice discussion with Ryan here. So you can see this fluoro, because of this ortho position, it will bump into it. So then it stays like this. You can see they are very interesting. It stays like this out of plane. Okay, and it folds back. And you can actually do this back and forth in monomer species. If you take on monomer of this, you can visible light, you can go, and then you can again come back. And you can nicely follow it up using the tail wavelength, which I just earlier showed. Even if you put it on peptide, it stays intact. Now the fun begins here. I will show you some NMR spectra to show. You see this. Interestingly, we showed, and I am giving you already the hint. This particular molecule, it forms very nice nanofibrous like structure. And if you shine light to cis form, actually you will see that there are this donut or medu vada like structure, and they are so stable it doesn't come back. This is something is very nice. This paper is now, it has gone for review. Now you can look at this molecule when we made it. We did a fluorine NMR, and you can look at this when we did this 19F fluorine NMR. So you have A type of fluorine, B type of fluorine, and C type of fluorine. 3 different type of fluorine, and you can get very nice 3 different peaks, right? And if you look at closely, like this is A peak which is coming, and the A peak has so many these things. Ideally, if you're talking about A peak, so you are getting coupling because of this fluorine, also, and also because of hydrogens, right? We learned this morning. This is a real case over here. So then what we did is that we did decoupled, proton decoupled we did, and then you can see that you get only the, the triplet because of the fluorine, because these are decoupled. Similarly, you can follow it up with the B over here. You can see it it becomes doublet, and the C over here. But now you might also ask me question that you are getting this which are major peak, but you are also getting little peak of this. What are they? Now this is interesting because when you have fluorinated azobenzene in the photostationary state, little bit of Z form will always be there, and that is why you are also getting this Z form peak. And we can calculate based on the integration how much E form is there, how much Z form is there. When you do photo switching, what happens to that? That I will show you. So it's very nice, and I'm also learning with you the fluorinated compounds and its NMR, and you can see that this was a E form, right? And E form had this kind of spectrum. More majorly, these are all between E form, and these things are coming due to Z form because you can see that E form has around 87% of your molecule in the E form, right? And the rest are a little bit in the C form. You can actually calculate from both HPLC and NMR. We have corroborated that data. Now, if you shine light in 5-3, you can see that it goes into cis form, and as soon as you get into cis form, you can see that this peak becomes more, and this peak comes down, and this comes down, and this goes up. So you can see this very nice photo switching behavior between this molecule. We also, now this is very interesting, we also try to do OZ spectra, 2D.
How you did this experiment, NMR experiment? Like the light, how it was arranged, like this, how long or you just put the light and then turn the cartridge?
Yeah.
Inside not possible, right?
Inside in situ we don't do. Basically you can see NMR is a quartz tube. So you can take two NMR, same one, you record it, shine light, again put it in, and they have, this is another interesting thing, I did not talk about it. When I was showing this UV spectra, the half-life of cis form in the fluorinated azobenzene is really good as compared to the visible. This is something also very important, particularly if you are looking for the photopharmacological active form and dormant form, that perspective. This is important. So yeah, we do that way. And we also looked at the COSY, and you see that when you looked at in the E form, and this is the typical E form, the azobenzene, you can see the distance between the fluorine and the ipso carbon is actually quite high, but if you go for the cis form, you see that drastically gets reduced. And because of this, you see that the 2D and COSY NMR, you see only the diagonal peaks, you don't get to have the cross peak. And we get to have only in the cis case, you get to have these cross peaks. They tend to interact over here. This is something very nice, and we found out, and thanks to Ryan and all the discussion this morning also with Srinivas, we now understand it's completely that what actually goes on. It's actually what happens is that this particular carbon becomes actually delta plus because of the fluorine it's pulling the electron, and this die, okay, they can actually have very interesting stabilizing interaction over here. And not only that, it can also stabilize the other carbonyl atom of the peptide which are actually in the vicinity. Okay, I will come there when I show. Yeah, you can see that many of these things are actually closer. Many of the carbonyls are closer. So when it comes closer, you can see that there may be possible interaction, which we are going to look at through the DFT structure now. Anyway, now this is important to have the stabilizing interaction. Keep in mind. I just wanted to show you. So another interesting thing, because you put fluorinated azobenzene from normal azobenzene, you went from normal azobenzene to fluorinated azobenzene, you can follow it up by the circular dichroism. You can see that entire self-assembly, from monomer to self-assembled structure like this kind of structure, it takes almost like 2 days to form. It really takes time. But if you put fluorinated azobenzene, incidentally it happens within maybe 4 or 5 hours. It just happens in 4 or 5 hours. So you can see that from 2 days, you can get your self-assembly to these nanofibers, which is an AFM image, you can get there so quickly. Now another interesting thing is that this guy, if you shine light 365, that is the UV part, you actually get into complete disassembly, that nanofiber-like structure. But in this particular case, as I was saying, you can see that there is this thing with a dot. It's all Medubara. Can you see that? So it's exactly like that. And incidentally, this, if you wait, it actually comes back. It never comes back. This is so stable, and that is why I was talking about the the stabilizing interaction of the fluorine with the ipso carbon and possible carbonyls. And that is what is stabilizing and it is folding back. It's like a hinge like structure in the door. You can see the hinge in the door. I think it is something like that is happening and it is not leaving it. So self-assembly, we saw comparative self-assembly, it gets really better and it gets stuck. And we followed it up. Of course, we followed it up by UV. I'm not going into details. Maybe you can see that this is the fiber we get. And we can do this photo switching very nicely. We can calculate from the UV or HPLC or NMR the percentage of photo switch. And you can see again from TEM. TEM, you can see that very nice such kind of medulla. Okay, actually our idea was and Gunjan has been doing this work, that can we make this Olympic ring, toroid, this is called toroids. We wanted to have this interconnected toroid. That was one of the goals we tried. We have been still trying. Now we change the fluorinated number of fluorine atom there and we would like to make the Olympic ring, and it will be really fun, cool experiment, because there are one or two nature paper from Shiki Yagai's group in Japan, in Chiba University. He has been doing one or two, but not on peptides. He is doing on some pyromatic surface, not fluorinated also, but we are also going to get there. So with the fluorine in chemistry in mind. So I think I just showed it here, just one D NMR. When you have this nanofiber form, you don't get to see any peak because they get broadened. But as soon as you shine light and get such kind of structure from nanofiber to this, you get to see such kind of peaks actually emanates. That means there are certain amount of flexibility you get to create in the cis form. And we also did the dozy NMR, which we need to also repeat and do multiple times. We don't see much difference, but yeah, we see that in dozy, the self-assembled structure is actually a little higher than the, the Z one is little higher, the toroid one is little higher dozy as compared to this one.
So is it from amorphous to crystalline?
No, it is not amorphous to crystalline. Both are, both have certain amount of fibrous crystalline degree, but this to this, the morphology changes.
Maybe it is
amorphous. Yeah, we have to do the sacks. It's a good point. We have to do the sacks, but sacks is not functional at the moment, I guess. So that's something we can definitely.
You're showing that cyclic form, but is it really cyclized or is it just because there's no any connection, right? Just the whole cycle.
Interestingly, if you start with, this is a very important crucial point, it depends on the history of the sample. So you take a Z form, put it in, throw them into water, they will form very nice fiber. Sorry, if you take a E form of the peptides, throw them into water, it will form very nice fiber. Now that E form you convert into Z form in the monomeric form and take that monomer, throw them into water, it will do nothing. But if you start from the fibers and then shine light, then it will form such kind of medulla. Okay, this is important. That means in the thing, in situ change is very important. That is what we are thinking, that maybe the adjacent fluorine is participating in the carbonyl. Some of these things we are trying to now validate with the MD, but I think I will show you a very nice MD simulation data. As I was saying, this is coming very closer, and you can see over here this is also coming very close to the carbonyl, which might have a participation of the neighboring intermolecular participation, and we actually looked at it. In MD simulation of E form, if you look at, you see very nice fiber-like formation you see. You get to have this 1D growth of the fiber. Our collaborator has done this. But as soon as you shine light, you introduce little bit of Z form into it, Z form, and you can see that you have this pore creation in between the fiber. That is actually, we cannot run more than 500 nanoseconds, the MD simulation, which is not possible. But I am pretty sure that if you can run it, you can actually eventually get into such kind of toroid-like structure, which is something very nice validation of our structure. And last thing, this is what we do always. We have not still tried the piezoelectricity of such fluorinated acetylene in the peptide, but we looked at our Kelvin probe. That is also similar thing. So what you do is that you take the AFM tip, touch the surface, and try to connect the circuit and see what is the surface potential of it. And in this particular case, in the cis form, you see that you have a very high surface potential, but in the case of trans, you have a very high cis form, you have a 664 volt around, but in the case of trans form, you have much lower, 84. So there is this structural orientation, it changes the, the electrical property. That is what we believe. The changes in piezoelectricity over this switching will be also quite dramatic. And that is why, and it will be also light responsive, visible light responsive. We can make hydrogens, and if you want to put some drug into the hydrogen and use some visible light, suppose you want to put it in colon, this is what we will be looking for. And you take a, the endoscopy thing and you put a localized thing, you put the visible light using without using any UV light, you can actually have a local release of the drug. So we have both piezoelectricity response that will go in a different way, but a visible photo switch will give us that particular tool to really get there. So I think I'll finish it here. So the introduction of fluorine, what we have learned from this, I don't know how long I took. Yeah. 30 minutes or so. It makes the UV photo switch into visible photo switch, and the implication of photopharmacology and hydrogels, which I have been stressing on it, and we are working on that. Another thing is that it enhances the piezo response for actuating scaffold for tissue engineering scaffold, which we are also working towards that. And I think these are two important things, and that's what brings us the fluorine, mysterious venture of fluorine chemistry. And I would like to thank all my students. So I think this work is mostly triggered by Gunjan. You can probably find her here, and she's there also. And yeah, so she has done all this work in fluorinated azobenzene, and the other azobenzene work is being carried out by Janvi. So I think, yeah, they are working hard, and I'm able to present in front of you, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share some of our recent updates using fluorine solutions. Thank you.
Any questions? They are enjoying
Uh-huh.
also.
This one? Yeah, we go every year in summer. I think we have a group retreat. We go some jungle and we do a group meeting there. We discuss science. So because we have to, what is our first slide? We have to be nature mimicking. नेचर देखेंगे और उसको मिमिक करेंगे. So नेचर देख के wow बोलेंगे. उसके बाद subsequently we'll ask how. Wow and then how.
So yeah, regarding that cyclic structures, because you said that T form you put it in water, right? And then allow it first polymerization, and then you saw send light, and then it's cycled. So have you tried to work on the concentrations?
Yes. We have done that in different concentrations. Exactly. This is something we're trying to do all these kind of things. Yes, if it is a higher concentration, we also try to grow, put fibers into it so that it penetrates like this. Something like that it stays. Okay, then that will be like, it's like sikh kebab. Sikh kebab देखो? वो खाए नहीं है, right? सर लखनऊ से पता ही है. तो सीख कबाब में जैसे होता है कि you put things under the stick. We also wanted to put the nanofiber and put those rings, but we are struggling a little bit with this microscope. So some things we are asking is absolutely, and as I said that we wanted to make this catenine like rings, Olympic rings, or janjeer banana चाहते हैं. So those are some of the things we are looking at, and I believe that is only possible if you change a little bit in the peptide side, and also the number of fluorine if we change in the azobenzene. That is what we are now doing. So, of course, I did not show the synthesis. You don't get more than 20% yield when you actually make this fluorinated azobenzene. So what we start with is this difluoroaniline, then brominate over here. That bromine, you make I think we make it aniline, this side also, and then as diazotization and all this we do, and then get it something like that. Cyano becomes COH, this side, and that aniline, that we do diazotization to get it. But then you don't get good yield in the diazotization reaction, hardly 20%, but still, yeah. So we have a number of variety of system which is now coming up in the group. So let's see.
Any questions
from students? Are you masters or PhD?
It's long day. Masters, PhD, postdoc, yeah. So I think there are no questions. It was a very long and very nice, interesting day, and we should conclude with very thanks to Professor Ashish Pal. I request Professor Jain and Dr. also to join.
I think they are pioneers, and we are always getting inspired by Professor Dr. and Professor Jain.
Congratulations.
Very nice.
So what we are going to do, because we have only one day left, and we have two talks from Professor Atman, and he has very kindly agreed to, because one talk he planned for the Shiksha Mahakumbh, and that could not happen because of the very big event and lot of guests. So he will be giving a afternoon talk about his research. So it will be like a long lecture, long research talk, but we'll take a short break. Right, so 50 minutes too. So, and that lecture we will open it for all the institutes so that many other students also can join in the Friday afternoon. So I will also I will try to give you some by tonight. I will try to give you some some work for the through NMR. So some examples, some spectra, and then you need to try to work on those spectra and see if you can correlate like those the spectra with the structure. Okay, so this will be a kind of a spectral workshop what we are doing for the first year master students. And tomorrow we will have a biweekly function also. Those who have a 100% attendance, only those will be given certificates. Okay. Yeah, or maybe 90%.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, 80% because of the recommendation. So those who have more than 80% attendance, only those will get the certificate. The rest all will not give the certificates. Okay. So I think overall it was a very nice day. Let's conclude for today, and we will start our session tomorrow at 10 a.m.